So today I'm going to talk about how to do your own bookkeeping because there are a lot of companies where you may be early stage and you may be trying to figure it out yourself. And a lot of people are running into issues because they don't really understand how to do it, what should be done. Well, today I'm going to talk through that. And then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to actually give you an inside look at some of the internal training videos that we use to help our team understand and learn how to do the bookkeeping. So, if you are at a point where you're doing the bookkeeping yourself, this will be great for you because it will go step by step. I'll actually share screens and show you an actual process of what we show our internal people. So, definitely stay tuned. All right. So, if you are new to the finance for business owners, what I will tell you is what we aim to do is we aim to provide a lot of insight and context on, how to understand the finance side of your business because not everybody understands that and not everybody had the privilege of working with someone who does understand it. So, one of the things that we are doing is really going through and we're going to talk kind of step by step on what that looks like, what that means. And let me get this screen set up because I think it'll be a lot easier if I do a screen share for you guys so you can really see that. But the reason why this becomes very, very important is because if you don't understand the financial side of your business, then you're really going to struggle. And where a lot of people end up making a ton of mistakes is that they're doing the bookkeeping themselves, which is perfectly fine. If you're going to do that, you want to have some basic understanding of what that means, what you need to do. So we're going to walk through some of the very key things so you can avoid making some of the mistakes that people are making, because one of the things that will stop you from being profitable is not understanding your numbers, not being able to navigate it. Now, for some of you may feel like, hey, you know what? I'm at a point where I can't afford to hire someone else to do it. So I need to do it internally, at least for a short period of time until we grow the business to where we can hire somebody to do this for us. That is a great mindset. This will be perfect for you. Or if you say, hey, I don't really want to pay anyone because it's really simple, I can do it internally, this will be great for you as well. And so we're going to go through that. So now, as always, I like to tell people who are new to, if you've never heard of, the Business Talk Library, you've never heard of us before, here's a little bit, I guess, let me give you a little bit of context on my background to make sure that, you get a little bit of, you understand who we are. So here's a little bit of context of my background. So my background is accounting and finance. I went to school to study business administration. I have a master's degree in accounting from the University of Notre Dame, studied undergrad at Atlanta University. I lead my own accounting firm, launched the TL Turner Group, which is a firm that provides bookkeeping and CFO services to small and medium-sized businesses. So the great thing is I'm going to tell you exactly what I tell the people that we hire in our company, like some of the internal training that we do. I'm just going to share that with you because I think it's in your best interest for you to understand these things. And this is the actual what we live and we breathe this stuff. Like we do this for our clients. So I'm going to give you the inside scoop on that. I'm also a CPA, certified public accountant. I'm a 40 under 40 CPA. Our firm, the TL Turner Group, has been recognized in the New York Times for the great work that we do, as well as shows like this are hosted on the Business Talk Library, where we create a ton of content. I mean, we've created over 400 pieces of content in the last, at this time is the last 22 months, over 400 pieces of content to really help business owners like you understand, how to navigate some of these things about your business that other people aren't talking about. Now, back to the topic. So when it comes down to how do you how do you do your own bookkeeping? So a lot of people are trying to figure that out. So the way I like to think about it and the way we teach our internal team is through this three-step process. So even if you were going to hire us, this is the process that we are going to walk through to really get your bookkeeping in order, to really understand it, and to really make sure that you're getting the best. And we're going to walk through this three-step process. So the first step is going to be the setup. And the next step is going to be the actual bookkeeping, like the detailed transactions. And the third step is going to always be the review. These three steps are the goal to how we do bookkeeping and how we provide stellar services for all of our clients. So, when you look at the setup, what the setup is all about is in that phase, we're going to take time to really understand the business. We're also going to take time and looking at the, setting up the account if there's some accounts that need to be set up. And then we're going to look at the data feed setup. And let me explain that a little bit more. So, in understanding the business, what we are going to do is we really need to understand, okay, how does this business make money? How to, what are some of this things that this business spends money on? Now, understanding those become very, very important. And then also, where are they getting money from? Because you may be getting loans, they may be getting grants. You want to make sure you kind of understand that context about the business and then really understanding what does the business do. And that will become very, very important when you get into the details of the bookkeeping because you want to understand those because at the end of the day, the goal is to be able to provide financial statements that when you look at those financial statements, they actually help you make decisions in your business. So you want to make sure that you get a good understanding. I mean, the big thing is, how does this company make money? What do they spend? And what are their expenses? What do they usually buy as a business? And then where does the money come from? Does it only come from customers? Does it come from, banks or grants or scholarships or donors? You want to make sure you understand that. The next is the account setup. So we want to kind of understand how do they set up their accounts? Like, do they have, separate bank accounts? Like, let's say if it's a business that has multiple accounts, we kind of want to understand that. Like, are they using Profit First? If you're not familiar with that, you can Google it. It's a book that came out. And it's just a way for people to manage or simplify the financial side of managing their business. If they're using something like a system like Profit First, they may have multiple bank accounts. And we want to understand that. And the question of do they have credit cards? We want to understand that setup. And then you also want to ask things like, are they using a merchant? Like, are they using something like Stripe or are they using like Cash App or are they using some other form of payment or like Shopify or something like that where you really want to understand what does their account structure look like. The next thing you want to understand are the data feeds. It's, with a lot of the online accounting systems, you can set up a data feed where the information will feed from your bank account directly into the accounting system. And we want to understand what type of data feeds do they have, or you can set it up to where your payroll, let's say, if you're paying your employees and you're using something like ADP or Gusto, where your payroll data actually feeds directly into your accounting system. We want to kind of understand what are the setups, what are the data feeds there. And so that's what we cover in the setup process. And usually the setup process, there's a lot of conversation between us and the client, or really, if you're doing the bookkeeping yourself, it really be you writing this stuff down and really just kind of keeping notes. And then the next thing, after we do go through the setup, the next process is the actual bookkeeping. Now, the chart of accounts are where, I guess if you think about it this way, is, your financial statements are like a book. Your chart of accounts are going to be kind of like the way the book is organized, like the chapters and the subsections. And so when you think about your business, when we were talking about understanding your business, let's say if you are a one of the examples I'm going to show, or that I walk our company through, is we own some investment property, and in some of the properties that we own, we kind of walk through like, hey, what are the different types of revenue that you get? So, you got revenue customers pay us for, or the tenants pay us for a rent. And then there's also the other things that they pay us for, whether it be like, services that we offer in some of the facilities, or even just rentals where someone wants to rent the common space in some of the facilities, where those are different ways that we make money. Now, in your chart of accounts, you may want to separate out like, hey, I want to see how much of our money came from just the normal rent from the tenants. How much of it came from some of the Airbnb, like the short-term renters. And then how much of it came from people that wanted to rent the common space, or how much of our money came from the laundry care services. So you want to really look at different, you want to, your chart of accounts helps you break it down like that. And the goal is you want to set your chart of accounts up in a way that really helps you understand the business. I mean, because when you look at your financial statements, you should be able to look at it and say, hey, I understand what's going on here. Next one is the classification. Now, this is where you start looking at your transactions and you start seeing what money came in, like what was it for, or what did we spend money on? And what you're starting to do there is you actually move the money to the right chart of account that is related to. For example, if someone paid us for renting the common space in one of our facilities, then what we do is we say, okay, all right, that money needs to go into the rental, or the space rental in a chart of account. And so as you start to organize your expenses and your income by the account that it is most related to, then that will help. Now, another feature that we look at in bookkeeping is kind of this principle called like kind of matching and invoicing. Because sometimes what you want to do is you may actually invoice your customers through your accounting system. So if you're creating the invoice in your accounting system, when that person actually makes a payment, what you want to do is you want to connect the dots between those. You want the system to know, hey, we sent this person an invoice for, let's say, $600. The cash actually came into the bank account. We want to tell the accounting system to match these two together. This $600 is related to this invoice. So there is a step in there where you want to do that so that so things don't get double counted in your accounting system. So if you're doing invoicing and there are transactions that are happening, we want to make sure that we're matching things that are properly related to one another. And then the third section, which I think this one is probably the most important section that I think a lot of people don't really spend a lot of time on, and which they should, because this is very, very important. If you're going to do your own bookkeeping, you have to do this section. And a lot of people skip it, but I'm telling you, this is a section that really, really does make a difference. The first one is the account reconciliation. Now, the account reconciliation is where you look at things like, the financial statements say, what is the bank balance? Like, what do your financial statements say? This is how much cash you should have on hand. And then actually going to your bank account and comparing it and saying, does that number match? And if the number doesn't match, there should be a very clear and legitimate reason as to why your financial statements say your cash is X and your bank account says your cash in your account is Y. What you want to be able to do is you want to be able to explain the difference. And so even with other areas, let's say, for example, if you're in a business and you're invoicing your customers, so you want to be able to compare things like your accounts receivable. You should be able to look at your accounts receivable And you should be able to say, hey, my accounts receivable say that my customers owe me, let's say, $20,000. You should be able to actually trace that $20,000 down to specific invoices to where you can say this person owes us 4,000, this person owes us 5,000, this person owes us 6,000, and this person owes us 2,000, this person owes us 3,000. Like, you should be able to get that detailed about it, because every balance that sits on your balance sheet should be connected to something. Like, there should be something that you can point to say, yes, that balance is correct, and here is why. Now, as I said, like with your cash, let's say if your accounting system says your cash in your bank account is, let's say, $10,000. But when you look at your actual bank account, you say, well, the bank says I have $12,000 in the account. You should be able to understand what is the difference between that. Is it that you wrote some checks that haven't been cashed yet? So you recorded it in your accounting system, but it hasn't actually cleared the bank yet. So that may be what you call a reconciling item. So you want to make sure that you understand that, because a lot of people, what they end up doing is they just operate their business off of their bank statement, and their financial statement may say that their cash account is negative $20,000. Clearly, that is not reconciled. Something is off about that. And so you want to make sure that you're looking at those things. Now, the financial review is when you look at your financial statements, the easiest way to do this, I think, is to look at the financial statements over time and to ask yourself questions like, does the trend make sense? Like, does this make sense when I look at this over time? If I see that, hey, 1 month expenses are way, way up, and then the next month expenses are way down, I'm asking myself, if I understand what happened in the business, I'm asking myself, does that make sense? Because if it doesn't make sense, then that may be a sign that, hey, something is not right there. And that's where I need to look a little bit further. Now, what happens with a lot of people is, because they don't do a financial review, what ends up happening is they get some crazy numbers in their financial statements. And eventually they just stop trusting the financial statements, because it just doesn't it doesn't make sense. It doesn't look right. And so you want to make sure that you are looking at those type of things and you're understanding that. The other thing is the financial reporting is, at the end of the day, you do want to be able to look at your financial statements, like being able to run your income statement and run your balance sheet, to be able to look at it and to understand it. Because what the financial statements do is they summarize everything else that we've talked through. All of that gets summarized on the financial statements, and your financial statements are going to help you understand, okay, what is happening in my business? And if you did all the other steps right, what it's going to help you understand is, hey, are we in a good position? Yes or no? Now, a lot of that probably makes sense to some of you. And it might not make sense to any of you. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually go through and share with you some of the internal training that we've done. So give me a second. We're gonna tune into that so you guys can see what it looks like when we actually walk through the training for our internal team. So definitely stay tuned for that. All right. So, one of the things that, first I want to say congratulations for joining the TL Turner Group. That is amazing. We are a great team that really enjoys providing a great place for you to work, as well as providing great resources, great talent for our teams, because what we understand is that finance is essential to helping our clients really navigate and understand what's going on in their business. So you're new to bookkeeping. So what we want to do is we want to walk you through a very clear example of how we do and approach bookkeeping and how it actually works. And so let me share my screen, and let me get that set up. I'm just going to go ahead and share the entire screen. So as we talked before, I mean, for a lot of people, I hope that you guys have checked out the video that we did, just kind of giving people an introduction, because I think it it not only is helpful for the people who watch our show, but it's also helpful for people internally to understand. This is at the TL Turner Group. This is how we think about, doing bookkeeping and supporting our clients. There's a three-step process that we usually go through. That's the setup, the bookkeeping, and the actual review. So what I mean by the setup is really understanding some very key critical background information on our client. So let's do this. We're going to walk through an example of one of the investment properties that my wife and I have. So we're going to walk through the accounting, or we're going to walk through that one. That's the example I'm going to share with you. So here's how I would say we go through, the setup. All right. So through the setup, the first thing we want to understand is you want to understand the business. So in understanding the business, first question that we want to ask, and let me just make this bigger. So the first question we want to ask is, how do you make money? That is the number one question we want to know when you're running a business. So we're going to be looking at an investment property. So you have your long-term tenants. We have, short-term tenants. We have laundry care. And then there may be some other services like, rental of common space, or there's some like, repair work and stuff that we've done, where they hire someone to come in and do some like custom repair work. So there's services. So these are the ways that we make money. Now, the other thing you want to ask yourself when you're thinking about this type of business is, what do you spend money on? So, since this is a rental property, a couple of things that you're going to spend money on is definitely, since the building is financed, so you got your mortgage and interest. We have utilities. You have your landscaping. You have repair and maintenance. And if we're advertising and marketing space so we can attract new tenants, so you have your advertising. We have an accounting system, so you got your accounting system. So you have your, whether you're doing bank transactions, so there may be bank fees because people may be paying online and stuff like that. And so those are going to be some of your common types of expenses of where we're spending money. Now, the other thing that may be unique is you want to ask, okay, where is the money coming from? So this kind of leads us a little bit into number two. It's the actual account setup. So these are kind of connected. And what you want to think about with the account setup is, how many bank accounts are involved. In this case, we have a checking account and a savings account. And then you want to ask yourself, are there any credit cards? You also want to ask yourself, how are people paying? Like in some cases, people may be paying through Cash App. You also want to ask yourself, like, how are we making payments to our vendors? Like, for how are we paying the utilities? How do we pay the landscapers? And in our case, we're using Cash App to make those payments. You also look at, how do we, we're paying for the advertising. Are we paying that on an account? Like, do we have an actual account that we're doing bank transfers for? Like, you want to kind of understand that stuff because that goes into the setup. And then the next step in the data feed want to, okay, all right. You know, what accounts do we need to connect to the actual, bookkeeping system? And for that, what we're just going to do is we're going to actually just go ahead and hop into that. So let me log into my account. Dot, 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 dot. And we are using QuickBooks, so I'm going to log into my firm. When you log in, you may not see as many accounts as mine because I have access to all the clients, but you may see a shorter list. So what we are going to do is we're going to zero in on Turner Properties, which is one of the properties that my wife and I own. And so here you'll see the customer name or the business's name. You'll see different menu options of what's available. You also see the customer name there. If you ever wanted to see, like, get a little bit more context on the background of the business, you can go here and you can click on things like, all your different menu options, like account settings, if you wanted to understand a little bit more about the business, like EIN, contact information, phone number, stuff like that, and the address and all that good stuff. But what we're going to do is we're going to hop into really looking at what I want to do is first is looking at the banking. So here, one of the things that we definitely see is, like, for this business, we have two accounts. There's a checking account and there is a savings account. So when it comes down to connecting a bank, if a person is just starting out and they haven't set up their system yet, what you would do is go here to link or actually, you can actually go here to link account. And then what this allows you to do is to select the bank that you need to connect to. And let's say if let's type in some Wilson. Let's say if your bank was Wilson Bank and Trust, you would click on Wilson Bank and Trust, you put in the username to connect it, and then what that would do is it will connect the bank to where it'll show up here, to where then the transactions from that bank account will automatically feed into the QuickBooks account. So you won't have to go to the bank account to manually pull all the details. It'll automatically feed. So if a business is spending money from their business account, it will automatically show up in this system, which is great, which is what we want and what we want to aim for in having that feed show up. And then let's say if you came in and it was a little delayed, like in this case, we see that the last time this data got updated was August of 2018. So, or August 28th of 2021. You can click the refresh button. And what this will do is, and clearly it looks like I got to do a reconnection. So let me do a reconnection here. To reconnect the accounts, because sometimes you do have to, like, re-log in to reconnect the accounts so that the latest and the greatest data will feed in. Right now, updates are running in the background, but we don't necessarily need to do that right now for me to walk you through some of the steps. But this is how kind of the bank feed process works. And as you can see, it's still working. But yeah, that is how the bank feed process works. So you want to make sure, like I said, as you kind of go through, that is the bank feed. So in this case, it's going to be the checking account and the savings account. So that's how the data feed works. So the next step is going to be the actual bookkeeping. Now that is broken out by the chart of account is going to be first. Now what the chart of account is, and let me go back to, and I'll show you what maybe the easiest way to understand it is to look at the end result. And let me just go to what the financial statements look like. I'm just going to show for a full year. So what the chart of accounts are these things here. What you see here, that is the chart of accounts. these account names and stuff like this structure, that's what it means by chart of accounts. And the goal is for you to be able to quickly look at this and understand like how much money came from consulting versus how much came from rental properties, how much came from services, how much money did we spend on advertising. And so it allows you to be able to categorize your transactions. So when you look at it, it makes a little bit more sense to you. I mean, it's something that makes it easy for you to understand what's going on. So that's what the chart of accounts are. Now, to actually set it up, you want to go here to where it says accounting. You want to go to chart of accounts. Now, if we go back to our spreadsheet here, part of the reason why we took the time to walk through these type of things is because these type of things help us understand what types of accounts do we need to go into the chart of accounts. For example, if we know that, hey, we usually make money from these type of things, maybe in our chart of accounts, what we're going to need, let me do this. In our chart of accounts, what we are going to need is we have long-term tenants, so we're going to have rental income. A short-term tenant, we have laundry care, so you'll have services. And let's say, or you can do it as laundry care. And then you also have like services, so where people may rent the common space rentals. And then where we may be doing custom repairs where someone asked us to do something that's not already included in their rental agreement. Let's say, for example, if, you know, in one of our units they wanted some type of custom upgrade or something like that, and let's say if we charge, charge the fee for that or something like that. So you have your, service revenue. So these would be things that you would end up adding into your chart of accounts. And then if we look at expenses, and you say, okay, all right, so mortgage interest, so we need to have a loan account, loan slash a liability account, because we have to make a record of how much is the debt that's on this property. And then you got your utility expenses. You have your landscaping expenses. And then you have your repair and maintenance. You have your advertising and marketing and so forth. And you'll just go down, what are some of the types of expenses? And then when we go, and let's actually shrink this. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to split the screen so we can see both at the same time. So what you'll see here is on these chart of accounts, these are the types of accounts that we have. Now, QuickBooks will start you off with a set of accounts, but you can always add more to it. So if we go into expenses, utilities, we want to make sure that utilities exist, because that's one, based on this, that is one that we're going to need. We're going to have utility expense. So we want to make sure it exists in the chart of accounts. We'll have things like, your advertising and your marketing. So what we want to do, and you can always sort this by alphabetical order. You want to make sure there's something related to advertising and or marketing, so that can go in there. You also want to, we'll look at repair and maintenance. So you want to make sure that you want to make sure that we have something for, the repairs and maintenance. So here we got repairs and maintenance. Great. That is awesome. And then we'll look for, let's see if there's one for landscaping. Since we know that we're going to have regular landscaping expenses, let's ask ourselves do we have something for landscaping in there? We don't. So here is how you would actually add an account. So go here to new, click on new. What we would do is we select the type of account it is. This one is going to be an expense. And then what we want to look at is what's the closest category to this type of expense? Now, sometimes it's very clear on what the options are, sometimes it's not. But I'd probably put landscaping in the repair and maintenance category. And what you can name it is, let's say landscaping is the name of the account. The description you would give are lawn and tree care, and then click save and close. So now what we'll be able to go do is we'll be able to go down and we'll see that now the landscaping expense account exists. So that's how we go through, and like I said, of going through this process of when we understand the business, we know what types of accounts need to exist so that once we get to that point that we'll know how to actually set it up. Now, this is probably, once you go through all those setups, this is probably the part that you want to that you'll spend more of your time in, because once you set that up, you don't really have to keep doing it. So based on the data fees that we set up, remember when we set this up, based on the data fees that you set up, what you'll see is the transactions are automatically feeding into the system, which is great, because that is what we want. When we want the data to automatically feed into the system, and we want the data to automatically update. And if you look to see, based on when we did the refresh before, you can now see the date says that it was updated moments ago. So this tells us that now all the latest data is in there. You can sort by date. You can see that, yep, expenses from the latest levels came in. So that is great to know. Now, one of the things that we want to look at is when it comes down to your expenses are going to come through, and sometimes it's not very clear. So in this case, if I drill down into this, what I can see is there was a Cash App expense that happened for $225. Because it came from my Cash App expense, I can go to my Cash App account and I can see what was that expense for. Like, what did I spend $225 on? Now, because I just did it, I remember what that was. That was for to have an electrician come out. So I would then just click on category and I would type repair and maintenance. And then here, the vendor was John Pickett, and I can add him as a vendor and click, he's in John Pickett, vendor, he's in the system. And then here, if I wanted to, I could change this description to say, you know, electrician to review breaker box. And then what I would do is click add. Now, those details have been added to that transaction. So it now shows up in the system. The same thing where it looks like this is a utility bill from this is the vendor, where I can go here to put, okay, who is the vendor? This is the Cincinnati Waterworks, since I'm familiar with who this vendor is. And you can add, you can leave the description as is, or you can add more to it, but make sure that it's going to the right account. You select the vendor and then you click add. And you'll continue going through your different expenses, like this one here, this $18.99, this one for early heating, this is repair work, and so this is heating. Add that vendor in there. It's in the repair and maintenance. I know it is for, and then we click add. So that is how you would pick the different expenses. Now, one of the things, and you would go through all of your transactions and you would classify it, make sure you pick the right category, you pick who the right vendor is, and then you click add. Now, if this is a case where over time the system will get smart enough to know where things should go all automatically, like we've had Duke Energy expenses before. I know that's utility. This one has a rule attached to it. So what I can simply do is click the add button, and I don't have to go through those individual steps because the system already knows where to place it. The same thing here. Intuit is where we pay our online. So this is for the QuickBooks account. So this is the QuickBooks account, and it's going to go into a software account because this is to pay for the software. Click add, and it goes where it should be mapped to. Now, one of the other things that you really want to think about is when it comes down to matching, is that this is an accounting piece that a lot of people get wrong. And so I want to make sure that we look at it and we break it down in detail. For example, when it comes down to a mortgage, oftentimes when people get a mortgage, they just put it to the same account. But what you really have to do with a mortgage is only the interest should go to the income statement, whereas the principal portion should go against the balance sheet. So you'll have to actually split this into two different accounts. And the way you do that is to click on split. What this will give you the opportunity to say, okay, all right, how much of this should go to the interest, the mortgage interest, and then how much should go against the long-term loan. So the principal portion of this is going to reduce your liability, and the interest portion. So in this case, when I looked at the statement, I think it was about $300 of this is the principal, and then the rest goes against the interest. I know it is quite annoying when you look at that and when you're making a mortgage payment and you see how much of the payment goes towards the principal versus how much goes against the loan. So this is the principal portion. This is the interest portion. And so what this is going to do is this is now taking this one transaction that came in and we're splitting it between multiple accounts. And so the payee is going to be actually the payee is the bank. So we can leave it as mortgage loan paid as the payee. But what we see here is that we're able to split this one $807 monthly payment. We're able to split it between interest and the actual loan. And then what you would do is click apply and accept. And what that now does is it splits the payment between, and that's kind of how we do somewhat of what some people may call like the matching. So one of the other ones that I want to look at is if you were doing a um, if you were doing a invoicing. Let's say this is where in our bank account we actually received money from a customer for rental income. What you could do is you can click on find a match to see were there any invoices that you sent out for this so that you can connect the dots between the deposit that hit the bank account and the invoice that you sent out. At this time, there are none because we didn't do this as an invoice through QuickBooks, but that is a feature that you can keep in mind. But that would be the steps of how you go through and you sort through all of those transactions, making sure that we're putting it in the right account, that the right vendor is attached, and that we are clicking the add button, putting it to the right place. And as you start to do it, where you see where these green buttons, these are transactions that we've seen in the past. So the system will start to get smart enough to know where to put that. And as you start to do that over time, the rules will get better. and this will become more automated. So it'll get faster for you every single month as you start to get better at that. And so now what I talked about earlier was, one of the areas where a lot of people tend to not do is this final step, this review step. This step is very, very, very important when you are going through trying to reconcile any type of account, because you want to, or when you're trying to close out the financials, you want to make sure that you can support the balance. So we're going to go to the balance sheet because it's probably the easiest way to see it. And when you start to look, what you want to see is, like in this case, this hasn't been fully worked through and updated. The first thing I see is if there's a negative balance in cash, this quickly tells me that, hey, something isn't in the right spot. I mean, that tells me I really need to click into this. I need to understand why that balance is what it is. And you can go back and you can look at the history to see, and we can look at it to see, okay, all right, what's making this balance this amount? And go back even further. And we can see, okay, that's why this balance is what it is. So maybe what this is I just need to move all these expenses to the proper account that they need to go into, which is probably going to be like this, probably going to be this checking account is what I need to move it to. But what you want to do here is you want to, look at, if you have a checking account and a savings account, you want to go back and then look at the actual bank statement and ask yourself, what does the bank say is my current balance? And does this match what the bank account says? If this number does not match what the bank account says, then I need to investigate to understand what is going on here. And I need to make sure that this makes sense. You want to do the same thing like with your fixed assets. You want to do the same thing with your liabilities. Like in this case, this should match the actual mortgage statement that we get from the bank. And you want to make sure that you can verify that those actually match and they reconcile. Now, the other thing that you want to do is you want to look at your profit and loss statement, because you want to ask yourself questions like, does this make sense? And since I haven't done the 2020, 21 stuff, let's go back to, you can actually look at it year by year. And what you can start to do is you can say, does this make sense? This is how much revenue we had in 2020. This is how much revenue we have in 2021. Does that look right? If it looks off, maybe you ask yourself some questions about, hey, what changed? Does that make sense? Is this missing something? The same thing with your expenses. This is how much we had in expenses in 2020. This is how much we're showing in 2021. Is something missing? So when we start to ask ourselves questions like that, we can start to understand, hey, what's going on here? Is there more work that needs to be done to fix this? Because this part helps us bring out things that may be missing. Like, for example, clearly here, we went from something down to zero in all these areas. What I know is we probably need to look a little bit further to make sure that things got put in the right categories. There are some transactions that probably still need work. And so I need to make sure that I go back and I check those things, because at the end of the day, what our clients should be able to do is they should be able to look at this profit and loss statement. They should be able to look at it and understand, yes, this makes sense, or yes, this is what happened, and I actually agree with the numbers that are here. This makes sense, and it helps them run their business better. But we have to look at that and make sure that we understand that and that we can provide that level of assurance. Because at the end of the day, what we're going to provide them is, if you go here to export, we're going to provide them with a financial statement so that they can look at it and they can get the financial report that they need. But if we don't go through the process of making sure that we do the bookkeeping properly, these statements won't matter to them because they won't be able to trust them. So, again, I will definitely say you have joined an amazing team and welcome to the TL Turner Group team. As you get more comfortable with the resources, the teams, and the processes, and you get more comfortable with the clients, you will start to see that we add tremendous value to every one of our clients. And it is our pleasure, it is an honor to have you on the team, and it is our honor to support the growth of small and medium-sized businesses. So, hopefully this was very helpful for you. If you have questions, definitely reach out to your managers, because your managers can definitely explain things a little bit more, can walk you through more detail to really help you understand this is how we approach bookkeeping.
We get it. Keeping track of your finances can seem pretty overwhelming when you're running a business. Achieving your financial goals in business should not be a guessing game. That's why it pays to work with someone that can take a hard look at your financial numbers and not add more stress to the balancing act of running your business. The T.O. Turner Group will provide a clear and concise explanation to your financial standing.
I got the returns that you sent to me and crunched the numbers and
without a lot of the complicated language. We want you to get the most value out of the accounting and the finance side of your business. The T.O. Turner Group provides a variety of ways to approach a better understanding of your finances and provides solutions to common problems that so many business owners face. The T.O. Turner Group will simplify finance and help you make smarter money decisions in your business.